say a very, very warm welcome on behalf of both the Schools Plus and the Salesforce team. Really is terrific to see your faces again. It feels like it's been a long time, and certainly just listening to those conversations just now, obviously a lot of things happening in your community. So really pleased that you've been able to create this space today to come together. Can I just quickly begin by also acknowledging the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of the land upon which each of us are joining today, and in particular can I acknowledge the Ngunnawal people of the Canberra region where I'm joining you today, and acknowledge their leadership in teaching and learning throughout many decades and generations of growth. As I mentioned before, we do expect a few more people to join us, probably about 20, which is terrific. Also joining, and I see you've just come online, Dav Mann and Louis. Fantastic to see you, Louis, from the Salesforce team. I know they need little introduction. Fantastic to see you both. I think your colleague, Kim Gago, who has also been working with us to support your schools, was also planning to join. Very warm welcome, and can I just say on behalf of everyone, thank you, and to your broader Salesforce team for your ongoing support. It is appreciated very much so. Thank you. Can I also mention a few of our Schools Plus team colleagues, Cheryl Nixon and Chris Rosinski, again, neither need much introduction. And two of our fabulous coaches, Jeff Bruce and also Adrian Bertolini, are joining us as well. So thank you, and of course, very warm welcome to the most important people in the room, you. Thanks for making the time again. Look, today's agenda, the theme is blended learning 1 year on from the disruptions of 2020. And as I said, as we were chatting there, waiting for the time to kick off, clearly a lot of reflections, a lot of different experiences. Today's agenda really is quite simple. Firstly, it's an opportunity to share some of those reflections on what has worked well over the last 12 months, and certainly what's worth continuing doing, and as you are so very good at doing a little bit of troubleshooting and supporting of one another and problem solving. I think of all of the groups we work with, this particular community of schools does it the best. You really do lean in and offer ideas and reflections for others to learn from. So the first part of our program today will really create that opportunity. And can I say a thank you to those people who did sort of share some questions too, just to kick that conversation off. But certainly it's intended to be a fairly relaxed conversation, and one that needs to go where you want and will find it most useful to go. In addition to our discussion, we'll also announce a new funding opportunity. Again, thank you to the Salesforce team for that support. And then finish off with a quick update on plans so far for our 2021 virtual collaboration forum, and importantly, take a few moments just to get some input from you around that program development. So sort of three things happening there: the discussion opportunity, the announcement, and then a quick update on the forum. I guess on that note, this time last year, we were certainly, and we did actually meet almost to the day 12 months ago in a similar forum. And I can recall it vividly because I think we were all amidst the uncertainty of COVID at that time, and were certainly still reeling from many of us from the experiences of the different natural disasters that had peppered the country. So it was certainly a time for us of great uncertainty and certainly a lot of change. Some would argue still is, but certainly I think we've become a little bit more accustomed to it. When we talk about change, I think one of the things we certainly observed, you definitely experienced, was that change in the world of teaching and learning. And alongside your colleagues and certainly the schools that we worked with, we saw that challenge and that change you met it head on, basically, creating a lot of new opportunities for your students. In the forum in September, and I know it was the first time we'd come together for an extended period to sort of reflect and share learnings, you talked a lot about that. Today, really, as I said, is that opportunity to take that to the next step 12 months on. I guess what I would like to do, and it's reflecting again, we've already had some conversation before we officially started. I wonder if I could just hand over to Emily to kick off this conversation and just share a little bit about your reflections of the last 12 months and any particular examples of things that you've, I guess, implemented in response to 2020 that have been really advantageous as we've moved on. So Emily Signorini, can I pass to you from Casula High? I don't think needs any introduction.
Hi. Yeah, I guess a really big thing that we learned as a school, something I'm quite proud of, I know most of us do, is we try and look at things differently. And then when COVID happened, we were loaning out so many laptops to kids, and we really, I mean, even though we know our kids are disadvantaged, we know we're low socioeconomic, we know they don't have access to things, it really put in the spotlight that we had kids, doing essays from phones. We had a kid saying to us, no, it's okay, I've got an iPad, but it was one iPad they were sharing with their 7 siblings and their mum and their dad who were trying to work from home as well. So something that we really learned was the importance not just to support the kids here at school, but to actually try and move into their community and support them out of that. So it was through you guys, School Plus gave us a little bit of funding to actually buy a few laptops, which was amazing. And we've now actually taken that and produced a laptop loaning program that we've started with Year 12 already. So those students that express the need to actually be able to access that technology at home, we're now loaning those laptops too. And it sounds really simple, but it's just wasn't something that we had thought of previously. It was more about using it in class, not actually about moving into that home life. So that's something we're already doing now with those resources for Year 12. And then looking, as we learn from that, looking at moving back into Year 11 as well.
Yeah. Fantastic, Em. Can I just ask anyone else in the group here, did anyone else adopt a similar approach, have a similar opportunity that they saw? Any other reflections there, or any questions, I guess, for Em, just in terms of logistics or challenges in implementing it? Anyone like to add in there? No?
For those, I don't know, maybe if they're curious about logistics wise, we've basically treated them like borrowing a book. So we've got an amazing librarian. So we just basically loan it, swipe it like you do when the kids are leaving the library, like a book, and then they return it at the end of the year. So that's how we've handled that sort of asset side of it. And it's working well at the moment.
Yeah.
We had to give out SIM cards to our students because the internet was such poor quality that they couldn't get onto the internet enough to download any of our software, to the point where the SIM cards were sort of working, but it was really hard when their internet wouldn't download the huge amount of documents they were sending out, especially to our senior classes, which I did 11 and 12. They just couldn't handle it was crashing constantly. So that was our issue at the time.
Yeah.
We had the similar issue at our school. We had few students who did not have any internet connection or so the principal had to buy some dongles for the students where the internet thing was uploaded for the students to use, especially Year 11s and Year 12s were struggling because, as Emily was telling, they had only one table and every other member of the family is sitting around the table listening to all other teachers teaching and along with all other things going on, and it was so hard. And what I realized is when the students came back, our library is been having some big work going on and big bang bang sound coming up, but the kids have so tolerant for that big noise, they're not even complaining a word. And I asked, one of the students, I said, are you guys not irritated with this sound, which is your learning time, and you are not getting to time to learn? He goes, Miss, we are going through many things and we are dealing with it. This was the thing, so we're trying to get them out of that and to talk more of what they're going through and how we can help them, kind of stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie. I'm not sure if I'm coping so well with the extra noise. I've got very used to not having that. Any other reflections there, just around or solutions to the internet connection challenge that I know so many of our schools have experienced?
I don't know. Did anybody solve that problem? Because we never did.
Thanks, Adrian. I guess
we just had dongles as well.
Yeah. And were they provided in with the laptops? Like, how did you, again, just from a logistical perspective, what?
Yeah, the department initially provided us some specifically for our Year 12 students. So that's what we used to start with. Then we found you couldn't buy any because everybody was buying them, even if you wanted to purchase some. But it's something that we're now aware of, that we need to have in our back pocket for whether, hopefully this never happens again, but even just for the need of the kids, if they're going home over the school holidays and need to take part in a video conference or whatever it is.
Yeah. Thank you. I guess what it has done is illuminate that this is a challenge for a lot of our kids, regardless of that context. So yeah, thank you. A few questions came through as people registered, and I just wonder if I can jump one in there. I think there was Leonie online with us. I know she was going to be here, but I haven't seen her pop up. Leonie, are you there?
No, she hasn't come in, Bron.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I might hold off. And in fact, if I could, I think Stella is here. Stella Ginman from Cecil Andrews. Stella also offered just to share some reflections of her own. And can I just mention, I think most of us have met Stella before, principal at Cecil Andrews in Western Australia, but she's on long service leave today or this term. So Stella, I wonder if I can thank you for your dedication and thank you for making the time to join with us. So I just wonder if you'd be happy to share some of your reflections there. That you're in your car.
Hello. Hi, Bron and everyone. I apologise. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear.
Oh, good. Okay, well, that's good then. There's dogs and husbands travelling with me. But oops. Anyway, yes, look, it was a very, very interesting time because we know that we're in VUCA times and that we need to be responsive and adaptable to change. So therefore, we were not in a good position being a Loixia originally, but we had always intended to be utilising more of our technology. So it actually accelerated and speeded up our concern and need and interest area into blended learning, which is now a model that we have now adopted. So obviously face-to-face is our first preference model, and we had the time for teachers to collaborate, and we utilised that time to pivot and to make the most of it. And the teachers did a great job. They really worked together and collaborated. We had some people who were very talented. So not only were the students actually doing work that way, but we set up through one of our teachers with ability to set up a Moodle. We actually set up some amazing online professional learning that was outstanding. There's some really great work around the Aboriginal Cultural Standards Framework. We were all going to watch a film for the School Development Day in their blood it runs, and we didn't get to, so we put it online and we put all the questions and the provocations and the blogs and the discussions and the resources, and it ended up being tremendous. It was really good. We got great feedback, really great engagement response from the staff. So with the students, same as what I've heard people saying about the lack of dongles. A lot of our kids didn't have computers, internet access, or even a good study space. They weren't even able to necessarily study independently, set up a good home space. There was a lot of domestic violence at the time we know of, that increased with people having to be at home during the time kids weren't at school. They had issues, they were overcrowded, they were hungry. So we actually had a multi-pronged approach, and we were providing drop-offs and food and working with partners. Champion Centre helped with food, especially for some of the Aboriginal families, because we've got a very high proportion of Aboriginal multicultural students. So we were able to get them some essentials and also just reach out and show them that care and support for them. So a lot of the students in senior school were very concerned. So we offered for them to actually, if they needed to, that we would set up something in the library, like an incubation space where they could be into pods and do something. But we were able to secure some great partnership help from Aurora, and they helped with computers and dongles. And then we actually invested in Education Perfect. So we were using Connect and Education Perfect, which was really great because we had a few staff experts and they were the ones leading the other staff. So new leaders emerged, which was great, gave them opportunity to rise up, and they showed each other how to use the technology. And then the kids were getting the idea of how to engage with it, which worked really well because they also get acknowledgement. They got some of the kids were really getting into that motivation of, you know, receiving the teacher feedback with it. That was so well done. I mean, we're looking into Google Classrooms and things, because since that happened and we had to go online, the students' feedback was around the fact that they like to see each other in the class, and Google Classrooms allows for that. And there are other formats as well, you know, like we were starting to explore with Teams. But I think the main thing is to make sure, like we did, that we timetabled on variety. So we didn't think it was healthy, and the teachers wanted the students to work more on projects and not be online all the time. So we actually planned their learning to have like a timetable where they would have periods where they were online, and then other times where they definitely weren't supposed to be online, but they would still be learning and working. Yeah. And so that's how we did it.
Wow, thank you. So certainly, as I reflect on what you've just been saying, certainly that multi-pronged approach, but just some of the reflections there around the feedback from the students, but also the new leaders emerging and how those changes created those new opportunities. Can I ask the group, anyone there, sort of any particular questions around sort of the nuts and bolts of rolling out some of those initiatives that Stella's just shared with us? Any questions around that, or reflections, similarities? Can I ask anyone else?
Can I ask you a question? I'm just really interested to hear your thoughts on how you saw pedagogy shifting as a result of having to go online, because quite obviously what happens in a classroom can't happen in a remote environment as online learning became. What did you observe about changing pedagogy in that time?
Great question. Good to see you. We actually learnt, and this is what I loved, what we could do, not what we couldn't do. So we were learning, learning to fly the plane while we were building the plane. And that's what was exciting. I love that space where it's necessitated and the changes that we've been seeking happened because they had to happen. So the pedagogy was so fluid and versatile and flexible. I love that pedagogy. And I said, when we move out of COVID-19, this is what we want to hold on to. Our new way forward is blended learning. So the pedagogy shifted, and it was very interesting that when the students came back, some of them said they preferred to learn online, while some of them preferred to be in the classroom. But what they liked when they first came back was to be able to pick and choose which classes they wanted to do because they had everything set up online. So what was really great, I think, was it stretched people and it stretched our imaginations, and it did make for some really great pedagogy. Like, I'm really proud of some of the staff and what they engineered, what they initiated. And look, even the phys ed staff put together these amazing TikToks And one or two kids who turned up initially before none of them could was working with the teachers, joining with it. It was great for relationship building, and they got very creative with, did some amazing work with the kids with the phys people made this wonderful films, and we can share those where they called The Great Race, and that was around driver education. It was just so well done, so engaging, humorous, and in the language they like, which is through the media. So I think, yes, in answer to that great question, it really was a fantastic way to adopt new pedagogy, which now we want to keep blending in. We want to keep pursuing that blended learning where we have a combination of the online, offline, but we're still going in a positive direction and helping the students to learn in a more futuristic focused way, giving them the 21st century skills and the type of learning they like and they engage in. And it's really good. I mean, to me, a really good model that I've seen is flipped learning. Can really get the students working. It really transcends time. The students can work together in groups on projects and all get marks together, so they all rely on each other. Everyone has to contribute equally. And they don't geographically need to be in the same place. They don't even need to be the same year groups. I've seen and heard of students actually accelerating from good resourcing to getting years ahead of, you know, being more prepared for ATAR and really getting ahead of themselves from that type of approach, which again, they really engage in and enjoy. So we just don't give them enough credit and self-agency. And I think that's key.
Yeah. Thanks, Stella. Any other questions there for Stella, or comments, reflections? Anyone else like to share?
I'd like to know how many people have continued with the blended learning. I've just come back from 3 weeks of long service leave, and I went the other way. I used all my resources I created for that time back in the middle of last year while I was away, because they weren't able to give a teacher that was competent enough to do the areas I was teaching in. So that helped me out because I already set it up. I was just able to push the button. The kids were all working off online in the classroom. And it worked really well because the internet works well at school. But I'd like to know how many people have kept going in that particular area of blended.
Would anyone like to share their
Yeah, I have to agree. If I'm not at work, I do exactly the same thing. I go back to something I've created, jump onto Google Classroom. There you go. There's your work. It's easy to mark and give them feedback as well. But I've had staff, and we're quite a big school. We've also had staff go either way. So staff that have completely gone back to their old ways and not to use it. But I've also got staff that are probably using the tech, not blending enough, and are going straight to the technology rather than the in-person support as well. So I think one of our challenges for this year is probably trying to be more blended, not sit at either end of the scale.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree as well with Emily, because some staff take it in blended approach, but when I'm not at school, I'll be teaching from online using my teams, where the class will be doing the CRT will be doing the class management. So I keep with my, unless and until I'm very sick to teach, I definitely do online teaching. I think Stella is very spot on saying that we need to have that blended, because we never know how the circumstances will change very soon. And the lessons we learned in the past, we need to keep in mind that this knowledge of in different using of different software. For example, science teaching in our school was basically the students were in the kitchen, hassling their parents to give the ingredients, because we didn't have a chance or opportunity for the ingredients to be supplied to the students. So they were hassling this powder, that flour. So we are teaching science in the kitchen, basically. That was the thing, you know. So we need to have that blended approach, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also like Stella's comment about that differentiation and really being able to stretch the kids. I know we had a lot more time. I probably have differentiated the best I ever did during online learning, because you really had the time to either scaffold for the kids or completely stretch them up. But I know it's really helped me do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Would anyone else like to add into that conversation? Mark, would you? Just no pressure. Mara, you good? Adrian, any reflections, of the schools that you're working with if they're not online today?
Not so much. I think, it was actually a really tough year for a lot of schools, is generally my experience, regardless of whether they were Schools Plus or not. But in the big picture of things, my experience was that as tough as it was quite transformational as well, because it shook up the existing narrative of what school would look like and how learning can be done. And, as Adrian was pointing out, you don't actually want to lose it as you move back face to face. So it's pleasing to hear that this focus on blended learning that Stella was talking about. But the existing paradigm of how teaching can creep back in, how teaching and learning can creep back in. So, I think this Salesforce funding for exploring blended learning is actually quite important, because there was quite a big need for it as part of it. And generally, now's the sort of opportunity for it to occur, because otherwise, by the end of the year, people will be back into their old habitual ways, and I'm pretty sure it'll just go back to the way things were, rather than developing a whole range of asynchronous learning activities, and in fact, bringing parents more into learning. That's one of the clear messages I kept hearing, is how much the parents actually started to appreciate teachers and actually understand how they could support their children as part of it. So that's sort of general picture from my side.
Yeah, no, look, thank you. Appreciate you sharing that, Adrian. It actually provides a lovely segue into one of the questions that Leonie shared, actually, and I'll do it on her behalf, given she's obviously not been able to join us. But her question was, have there been changes in connections with families, and, have they strengthened, and just really sort of open the conversation actually for anyone who'd like to share sort of their observations there in their school, and perhaps why or how it's been enabled. Mara, I can see your head nodding. I wonder if I can throw to you to sort of respond there.
Sure. Yeah, last year was very interesting in terms of our families. I think Julie might have a lot to say as well, but a lot of our students, as Julie mentioned, may have been, we have multiple students in the same family who were, all online in the same space, sometimes even in the same room, trying to follow different lessons. And it was quite challenging for them. Sometimes we had older siblings who were trying to support their, younger siblings in getting their learning done. And so I think there was a lot of appreciation. Both the teachers could see sort of how much work students were doing, even outside their own learning, and supporting their families. And then that families could turn around and see, just how much work their students were doing in different classes. And maybe that's something that's sort of missing as we've come back in person, that we sort of lose that connection a little bit. But I think maybe the blended learning tools are sort of how we're trying to maintain that we're aware of the fact that parents now have access to more of our online tools, things like Compass, and that we're trying to make a little bit more visible to the parents, this is what your students have been working on, and here are some examples, and here are the goals that they're working towards, so that they can follow along a little bit more even at home.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Mara. Would anyone else like to sort of share any reflections happening in their community?
We had, while we were away, I gave out my mobile phone while the kids were at home, gave my mobile phone out to the parents. And that was, being a year 11, 12 teacher, that was the most times I've ever spoken to parents in my life. They would ring me up or text me constantly about what's going on and what's happening. And it was the best thing ever. Now that we're back to the normal way of teaching, I hardly hear from a parent again. So it was strange that when the kids are at home, I'd hear from the parents. Now that they're back at school, you don't hear from them. They don't contact you much at all again. So it was a bit bizarre, actually.
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder what the thinking is there. Is it out of sight, out of mind?
Can I ask Adrian a question? I'm interested to know what the communication with the parents was at that time. I mean, what were they ringing you about? What did they want to know?
They were making sure their kids were on task, and
Sorry, I'm losing you a tiny bit.
Actually thanking us for the amount of work we're putting into having that they wanted to know what the kids were doing in their own bedrooms. So making sure they knew as parents that what I see them doing online is what but they were mainly talking to me about what the tasks were for the kids and keeping on track with the kids.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to sort of share any observations there?
I'd like to share our experience.
Thank you.
I think our school has been fairly innovative for a while in the online space. So homework, for example, we've been doing that online for 6-7 years, maybe even longer than that, part of the homework. So that was an easy transition. We had already Seesaw, the online platform, Seesaw. So it gave us the opportunity to, well, if we're using this platform already, let's take advantage of that. So our teachers still worked collaboratively. We had team meetings online to meet, to discuss curriculum. So it was obviously a very modified curriculum. We also did some surveys. We worked with a consultant and did some parent surveys on the shutdown experience. Overwhelmingly, parents were most satisfied with the level of communication that our school did, and that's communication at all levels with teachers, with the principal, executive. So they were very transparent and open. So I think the team, and also the other thing that came out of those surveys was the level of teamwork that transferred into a very calm atmosphere for kids to reduce anxiety levels. There was a bit of, and I know that word gets thrown around, so I suppose we should be careful how to use that word, but or another word might be a lot of parents were worried about, as some other people have been sharing. So we were very active and very active in addressing those concerns. Concerns around level of fitness, that children were too long in front of the screen. So we communicated with parents to say, okay, we do have this platform, but we also recommend you take a walk with your children. Please don't stress about doing 5 hours of literacy and numeracy. So we addressed those concerns in the community, and that sort of mitigated that to some extent. Going forward, we still use, and the other thing I will say too is that our teachers did a really exceptional job in terms of developing online videos, activities on Seesaw.
STEM activities, using STEM activities to keep kids engaged other than just doing literacy and numeracy, and incorporating that and making it hands-on activities as well. So, and providing materials if kids did need it as well, so they could get those things. And for those families who weren't available to access online activities, we also had handouts that the parents could come and get from the school, so those kids weren't being left out as well. We didn't have laptops to give out. We didn't have the ability to do that, and dongles and things, but we still made sure that there was access to all the curriculum materials for those kids who wouldn't normally have access otherwise.
Yeah, some really creative things, like in science. So we had children investigating what was in their backyard, what mini beasts and what they could find. So there was a level of creativity, but as Kathy said, also ensuring that there was a paper copy so that children who didn't have a device, and we have a lot of families who don't, weren't disadvantaged. So what's it like now? We were talking about that just before, and we still use Seesaw a lot, and it is used well. It could be done better, I think, as a generalised comment. So the term blended learning, do we have some online platforms that kids work from home? Yes, but it certainly isn't the main game that is at school. We've seen some teachers use videos and activities online within their classrooms more so. So, for example, as an activity in reading or in numeracy, and that's still an area that we're developing and working on in STEM throughout the and technology in the curriculum. So there's definitely opportunities, but it has changed as well. And I guess the key challenge, I think, is to maintain that momentum and continue to have innovation in that space for children.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kathy. Really appreciate your reflections there. And again, I guess similar to Stella there, quite a blended approach. And I think one of the things that I really took away then was just your ability to leverage what you had in place, and but also to meet the needs of your community, even if it, you know, in many ways, so that they all had access to learning. So thank you. Look, I'm mindful of our time ticking away, but I'm imagining this is a really useful conversation to be having for everyone. So I'm just wondering if I can ask one other question that was posted, and it asks the question, have you observed behaviour differences between your year levels? So I guess as we look at our blended learning model, and the things that you implemented, and noting that some of us are in primary settings, others in secondary, were there noticeable differences in how well our students and our families and our team members, our colleagues actually adapted? Were there variances? Would anyone like to just sort of share an observation there?
Bronwyn, are you talking about the kids after coming from COVID, how they were being in the classrooms? Is that kind of?
Yes. So
I would like to share something. So I'm not sure how many teachers have observed this. In our school, we have observed that kids are having a big challenge of mingling with the peers. Once again, we need to train them how to mingle with their peers, because most of the time, what they do when they came back from this COVID situation, they were always on their laptops conversing with their friends on Teams. So that even happens now when I'm teaching in the class, they will be on the laptop chatting with the other people on Teams. That's one thing we have observed, because they lost everything what they had to do in the past. We are retraining them. And the other thing which I observed, most of the teachers observe, is they lost the writing language. Basically, they are using emojis. And also for YOU, they use capital U, and for WHY, they use capital Y, that kind of language in the English. So these are some of the observations we have learned, because they were always typing and doing the no writing skills. Writing skills has gone down. And so we are very mindful about that particular thing in the leaderships as well, that we are improving the writing skills of the students one more time. Mm-hmm. We are training the students how to write, punctuate, capitalize, everything started from the scratch. That is something which we have observed in our school. I think I'm not sure how many of you are having the same kind of issues at your school.
Thank you, Julie. Some interesting observations there. Look, would anyone like to just respond there, or just to add one other comment, and then I think we might move on to our next agenda item. So if anyone has any, Adrian, perfect.
Yeah, I just finished a 12-month acquittal of a Salesforce school, and they were introducing a PBL model, and part of their challenge was it began at the start of COVID, in essence. So it's actually been completely delayed. And in fact, one of the real challenges that they dealt with was how this past term, they hadn't realized how much work they had to do to get the kids back up to speed, much like what Julia was saying, but in a lot of different ways. You know, the new year 7s coming into the high school have lower literacy, lower numeracy, a whole range of different challenges, behavioural challenges that the school has just had to focus on and develop these children, get them into routines, get them into norms, do all that baseline testing just so they can get them
Get them.
into a normal high school.
Yeah.
And that's, and I mean, that's in Victoria, where we clearly had 2 major lockdowns across the year. So there are sort of long-term impacts that while in some schools you've had some really great experiences, at the other end, in really low socioeconomic areas where parents aren't necessarily themselves literate or numerate, or are from refugees or immigrants and so on like that, there really hasn't been the support around them. So you'll see a bigger disparity, I'd assert, between the haves and the have-nots, one could say, between the middle upper class or socioeconomic groups and those in the lower socioeconomic groups as well. And there's all of that to work through over the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just add, Adrian, we found as well, it wasn't just retraining the kids, we had to retrain our staff as well. We were out of routine for so long. The amount of times I had to speak to a staff member about signing on when they got to work in the morning, or showing up for time to playground duty, because we just hadn't had to do it for so long, let alone training the kids.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for those reflections. I'm very mindful of time, and we have a couple of other things to discuss, but really appreciate your willingness to join into the conversation there. Can I invite you, if you do have other questions that you're keen to get people's thoughts from, please include them in the chat. Julie, I'm mindful that you did share a question with us online at the time you RSVP'd around what other schools across the country had to include after 2020. And I'm just wondering whether or not people might like to respond to that also in the chat, rather than in our discussion at this point, because I would like to hand over to Chris and Cheryl at this point, who are going to just give us a quick update on the new funding opportunities. So can I hand to Chris and Cheryl? And thanks again, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. That was a really interesting discussion, and I always feel really lucky to hear your insights into what's going on in schools as well. So that's really lovely to see everyone again and hear how you've all been going. I am also in the very lucky position today to be able to let you know that thanks to our ongoing partnership with Salesforce, we're able to offer another funding opportunity to this extraordinary network of schools. And we've really tried to tailor this to support the work that you've been doing around blended learning, build on the momentum over the past year, and really support you as you try to tackle some of those challenges that we've heard today. And I think also, perhaps stop you from slipping back, I think, as we just heard, kind of slipping back into old habits and what you know, and perhaps really building on what's been created. I'm going to attempt to share my screen while Chris takes over and tells me a few details about this funding opportunity. But while we've got Deb and Louis here as well, I just really want to say thank you again to Salesforce for the amazing ongoing support for schools in Australia, and particularly this amazing network that we've been able to create together.
Great, thanks, Cheryl. I will go through the nuts and the bolts of the opportunity that we're presenting to you this afternoon. And just as Cheryl said, I think it is really interesting to hear your thoughts around this, because when we put this opportunity together and when we sat down with Salesforce to look at what next, we did realise there that there was certainly an opportunity inside that blended learning space. And I think probably what really resonated was when Stella was talking about building the plane while flying the plane. And so this opportunity is about being able to, I guess, formalise and organise your thinking and action around that space now that you can take a breath. And very true, as Stella says, it is a new way forward, and it's something that we're wanting to support you to embed in your teaching practice moving forward. So in terms of the nuts and bolts, for individual schools, we have funding available up to $40,000 and up to $50,000 for a cluster of schools. So you would be looking at those projects beginning term 3 this year and finishing up at the end of the year in 2022. So the one caveat of this, as you know, many of you are still finalising your professional learning round money that you have used. You must complete your final acquittal for that professional learning round before you are eligible to apply for this funding. So if you wanted to discuss that on a case-by-case situation, please email me and we can have a discussion about it. If not me, certainly reach out to Beth or any of us here and we'll be able to give you greater details. You don't have to worry about writing any of this down. Over the next couple of days, we're going to send you the guidelines for this application process. You'll be very pleased to know that we've kept it to 3 pages. So it really is just telling you exactly what you need to know for this round of funding. The all important dates. So the round will open at 9 a.m. on the 17th of May, and it will close at midnight on the 11th of June. Once again, I know none of you are strangers to going through that expression of interest through Smarty Grants, as you're certainly well across now. And I think probably you are also well aware, but I'll just touch back on the major things we're going to ask you. So it's around those 4 key questions, some of which we've already explored and done some of that thinking. And it's about what is happening in your school community and why is this important to bring about change. Then we're going to ask you to outline generally what you think your key strategies and activities are going to be as you implement this change over the course of the next year. Obviously, it's about how you're measuring your growth and your success. So if you have some baseline data, we would love to see it, and some thoughts about how you're going to measure that at that 6-month and 12-month mark. And obviously, how are you going to sustain this change? And I think from what you're all saying is you're all keen to embed these new blended learning practices across all of your teaching, whether you're dealing with senior students, primary students, high school students. Inside that as well, so they're the 4 key questions. Inside that as well, you will also be getting coaching for that. So that coaching support will continue. And I know how valuable that coaching support is to you all. And I'm sure you're pleased to hear that that is going to be an ongoing commitment inside that funding as well. Now, are there any, before I say any more, is there any questions around that you might like to just throw out there now? I'm hoping that silence is because there's that excitement bubbling away and you've got 1,000 ideas already and you're ready to throw them all down on paper. So magnificent. If you're stunned in silence at the moment and you wake up tomorrow morning and you have 1,000 questions, I know you all have my details and I would be very happy to talk to you about it. So please, this week, give me a ring and we can have a bit of a chat.
I've just got a question. I guess it's just around clarification. What would the scope be for blended learning? I mean, is it fairly open in terms of a community home partnership that maybe is facilitated by online programs, platforms, etc.? Is it bringing? I guess I've got some ideas and we've got some things in place, but I don't know if it would quite. Yeah, I guess clarity around what we mean by blended learning exactly.
Yep, and that's really easy to answer. I think in terms of where we're going with this, it would be something that has raised its head in the last 12 months as you've been working through. If you believe the greatest need and the greatest way forward in that blended learning space is through working with your family or your community to support the students, then absolutely you can put that forward. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of elements of possible upskilling of staff in some of the budget breakdown. I'm sure we're going to see some involvement by the parent community or the broader community in that. I'm sure we're also going to see where you might do something like a flipped learning approach, and that might be a very student-facing focus. So we are quite happy to see projects across the whole gamut of blended learning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. That was a good question. I think that's it, Bron.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Georgia.
Eligibility of schools to apply for this, is that for all current Salesforce schools?
Yes,
and
correct.
Even the ones that have been accredited previously?
Yes, yes, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chris before we move to that next one? And Chris, just to just remind us again, round opens next Monday, is that right?
Yep. 17th of May, round opens. Round closes the 11th of June. So the guidelines will be coming out. Beth will send that out to everybody in the next couple of days. So you should probably receive that before the end of this week. But please, any questions, let me know.
Okay.
Can I add something there, if that's okay?
Of course, Deb, please.
Look, we want to hear from you about what's going to work. Like, there isn't a solution to this. We work in a tech company and we're still trying to figure a lot of this out. And it was really interesting to hear a bunch of things that you're all saying around that increased level of engagement in some areas and what to retain. And we're still working that out. So I want to hear from you. You know, we have a lot of agility when it comes to this funding as well. So please, any kind of big picture ideas, anything you have, nothing is off the table. Please start that conversation. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Dev.
Thanks very much, Dev. That's great. Look, if there are no other questions again, please reach out to Chris or one of us here at the team, and really happy to help once you start to think that through a little bit further. Just the final item that we wanted to, Chris, there's just a message there. If you could just share your contact details. In fact, I might just say it. No, I'll leave it till the end. It's all right. Our next item, really quickly, and Cheryl, if you wouldn't mind bumping over to the next slide, that would be fantastic. We did just want to flag to you that we are planning for our virtual collaboration forum this year. As the name indicates, we are pursuing with a virtual forum as we did last year. The date we set, and we had flagged this previously, is Wednesday, the 4th of August. And based on the feedback that we did receive last year, we are going to limit it to sort of a relatively small window of 4 hours with a break there. The time is set so that we can try and accommodate all of our schools across the country at a reasonable time. It's still a slightly early start for our West Australian colleagues, but hopefully that can work. We will provide some more details about the forum in early June. So this is really just flagging that it is coming. But one of the things that we did want to mention today, and Chris, please jump in as well if I miss something here, is we would like the opportunity to be able to share the professional learning resource that you have been working on as part of, for many of you, your most recent funding. Now, I'm mindful that some of you have completed your resources and you know, some of the complications of last year slowed some of our other work down. But what we are asking is if people can have completed that resource and submitted it to us by the 1st of July, so that we can then actually be able to share what you have developed as part of the forum. Now, we're still working out the best way to do that, but certainly as part of the forum agenda, what we would like to do is have probably a handful of people, maybe 3 volunteers, to actually as part of our agenda to share, or part of the program, I should say, share what they've been doing, but we will look to share all of them in some other way, whether it's through the booklet, through our website. It will just depend on where we get to at that point. To help us do that, we will actually ask you just to complete a quick cover sheet with some details on it, and also a permission form that will allow us to publish that on your behalf. But as I say, really just flagging this today, and in particular that date, and our intentions around and desire to actually share them as part of the program. And we will send through some more information come early June. We just thought it was best today to actually separate the announcement piece and the fact that you'll be getting information about that next week, and to leave this for a little bit further down the track, given that you are also busy. Can I also put a call out? We would love to hear from you in terms of content, in terms of how we go about delivering our forum this year. As I say, we will be in that virtual space, but really, you know, if you have some ideas of what's been working well for you, or what you'd like to hear or see or do during this time on Wednesday, the 4th of August, we would really love to hear you. I acknowledge that some people are able to provide feedback after last year, but you know, time moves on and needs change too. So we would really love to hear from you. So please send through either the school's address, or you're very welcome to reach out to myself in that way, and share your thoughts. So just a quick note, does anyone have any, I am mindful of our time, does anyone have any quick questions on that? And if not, any questions? So if you can, pop it in your calendar now. We will send out some more information in a couple of weeks, but if you can put that in your calendar. Great. Well, look, if there are no other questions, can I, on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for joining the conversation today. It really has been terrific discussion. We always learn so much. We hope you do, from hearing from one another. Thank you for your generosity in sharing. Please look out for the announcement, so the information about the new funding, and look out then in early June for more information about the forum. Can I also finish on a slightly sad note? Christine, who has just so generously offered her number, please reach out to her, because very sadly Christine is actually leaving the Schools Plus team in a couple of weeks, and we've really had a great deal, you know, we've been the beneficiaries of Chris's wisdom and experience in working with her, and certainly has been an active supporter of this network of schools through her role. Obviously, reach out to Christina. She's offered now, but please know that you can reach out to Beth or Cheryl or myself, and we're really happy to help you with any questions you you have. But Chris, on behalf of everyone, all the very best, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bron. I don't really feel like crying at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, very difficult decision to move on, and I've really enjoyed my time here at Schools Plus, and really enjoyed and learned a lot working with you all. So, you know, thank you, and hopefully I get a chance to speak to you in the next couple of weeks before I go.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks, Bron.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. Really appreciate your time. Bye for now. Thanks, Dav. Thanks, Louis.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.